Hello and welcome to the Geeks Review. I'm Royce.
And I'm Joshua.
A few weeks ago, Josh and I discussed Zack Snyder's Justice League, a 4-hour movie that did little to impress us, and left us wishing we could have spent 4 hours watching anything else. So today we're going to take a look at and discuss some movies that are probably a better use of your time, from classics with long run times to truly epic pieces of cinema, the likes of Lawrence of Arabia, Bridge on the River Kwai, Ben-Hur, which we haven't actually seen.
Unfortunately. I mean, we could have used some chariot chases in Justice League, but you know.
Oh yeah, true actually. But also, Lawrence of Arabia. Have you ever seen that?
That has been on my list for a very, very long time.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Epic films that really have that grandiose scale.
I mean, usually shot on location, you know, with tremendous run times and just epic performance. These are the films that are really held up as, you know, being the gold standard.
Well, I guess then, like, say, Clockwork.
A Clockwork Orange, right? It's a bit of a long film in Starting Stark.
It has been a very long time since I've seen it, but I can definitely remember it, so don't strap me into the chair and hold my eyelids open. I'll be good.
Yeah.
Clockwork is about a delinquent Alex. He and his little gang of rubes basically terrorize Neo-London in whatever time period it is. And eventually, Alex gets caught, sent to jail after they break into the wrong house. And the wrong house is able to say, that's him. His friends then move on with their lives to becoming police officers. But while in prison, Alex undergoes a experimental therapy. Strap him to a chair, hold his eyelids open, give him eye drops every so often. They play scenes of violence to classical music, which he hates because he enjoys classical music in order to not what's the reverse of desensitize?
Oversensitize, I guess.
Oversensitize him to violence and try and pacify him.
You pacify him by disgusting him, by really just reviling him, and it has quite a violent reaction when he does get out. Every time he hears classical music, anytime he's witnessed to violence, he has a breakdown.
He almost lurches forward and wants to be sick.
By today's standard, it's quite mild.
It is quite mild, but for the time, it was very full on. It's also a very long film in itself because it really, like films like Snyder Cut, Justice League, Good, Bad, and the Ugly, or even Scarface, which I would call an epic.
True.
There's a lot of talking, not much action, because it is a film on character, not
very much
events. So. Yes. And while being based on a book, and also coming from the, some people put him up on a pedestal, Stanley Kubrick.
Director who likes his long run times. The Shining.
The Shinin.
Yes, which we've discussed. Not very well before. We tried our best.
Yes, he definitely likes his art house films. And this is a staple of the art house epic.
I think back when this came out, this would have been like, those scenes of copious amounts of talking would have almost have been like for the audience to sit there and kind of wallow in what they've just witnessed, you know, the horrific scenes that preceded it, and to sort of really consider and to see Alex wrestle and become... It makes him almost sympathetic to a degree, when he ends up back at the house of the man he attacked and he sees the damage he's caused and being glared down by this man's bodyguard, played by David Prowse of Darth Vader fame. It's quite a tense scene.
By the end, he is, as he says, cured.
But not really.
No.
No. He's back to being the
same. He manages to break his programming, but figures out, I can be a lot more subtle with this.
Yeah. Oh, talk about social commentary.
Yeah.
With his violent friend who becomes a police officer.
Violent friends.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, that's grim.
And they take to the thing of beating the snot out of him.
This would have been an experience to see this back in the day.
Oh, it would have been. And a lot of people nowadays who have seen this film cannot listen to Singing in the Rain properly without rethinking of it.
Well, yeah, that's a Clockwork Orange.
Yep.
It just shows that he is as peculiar as the concept of a Clockwork Orange.
In an organic. I'm just trying to think. Epics. Well, there's Scarface, which you have previously talked about on this show.
A little bit, yes. This is, the rise and fall of Tony Montana, who's a Colombian, refugee who comes to Florida and makes his way in the world of the drug trade and, rises up until he can go higher no more and is brought crashing down, literally.
Yes, quite literally.
Quite an abrupt ending as well.
Very abrupt ending.
But I guess that's it. It's him. Once it's done, that's it.
I guess, since we've already talked about it in the past, another one I guess we should really move on to those old gold standards. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The first, technically, in the Man with No Name series, despite being the last one made.
So it is a prequel, is it?
Yes.
So yeah, this is, I mean, Lee Van Cleef, Clint Eastwood, and Eli Wallach.
Yes.
And this is just a sprawling, rambling spaghetti western.
It is one of the epics of the spaghetti western genre. Well, one of the more iconic epics, I should say. So we have The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The ugly being Tuco, the bad being Angel Eyes, being played by Van Cleef, and Clint Eastwood as Blondie, aka The Good. And it's a journey, really. A journey to try and find the unmarked grave and find this Confederate soldier, Bill Carson, who has the information of the location of 200,000 US in coins.
A lot of money.
A lot of money, especially back then.
Oh, yeah, gosh.
But at the same time, they have to avoid the North and the South because the Civil War is ongoing. And it's a tale of betrayal, trust, and, quite frankly, a lot of worming in the case of Tuco, a.k.a. the Rat.
It is very rambling almost, this film. It's sprawling because it's comparable to video games you have now. A more direct comparison would be Red Dead Redemption 2, itself a cowboy and western epic in video game form. And how the two are alike is that the player and the central characters of the film, they set off to reach a location and complete a task, and they get waylaid by side quests. That's the kind of feeling you get from this film.
They do. It feels organic in a sense.
There's always something they can never just, soldier on. And I really remember that fight at the river.
Yes.
Which is in the latter half of the film.
The grand scale fight as the North really pushes further.
It's tremendous, and they're just caught up in the middle of it and sort of slip through it the best they can. Yeah, there is so much to this film.
There is. The score is great. The story, long. For a 3-hour film, it feels longer.
Yeah, I did that in one sitting. I managed that in one sitting. Yeah. I mean, it has been a few years since I've seen it. And that's the troubling thing, is that there is just so much that I have forgotten it. And when I rewatch it, I can be treated like it is the first time I saw it.
You always feel the slight chill when Tuco starts to build his own revolver. You feel excitement and you feel, oh, what's he going to do? Is he going to shoot the guy? Nope. I'm going to take the money. I'm going to leave you the bottle. Ciao. To quote someone who was spoofing Lawrence of Arabia, this is a lot of things happened. This is a long film. There's really too much to grab, You will remember the iconic moments with Angel Eyes as he portrays one employer to the next. How Tuco and Blondie sort of went across the, whatever state it was, sort of just turning in Tuco and then claiming the bounty, and then turning in Tuco, claiming the bounty and splitting it.
Yeah, I remember the scene where he does take Blondie captive and just drags him along.
Yes, in the desert, yes, because he definitely goes, the South is that way, their army is pushing this way, and the North is coming from this direction, and they will not come into this hellspit. But then they find Confederate soldiers, most of them are dead, except for the half-dead Bill Carson. Tuco has half the information, while Blondie has the important part. And it really goes from there.
It's truly an epic.
It is. Dios mío, it is a long film, and I rewatched this last night.
Epic film, The Godfather, directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
This is all you.
Yeah, this is considered to be one of the greatest movies of all time. I've wanted to talk about this film for a while and sort of go and analyse it myself, because there's so much that's been said about this film, even differing opinions. The idea is basically, wanting to live the American dream, always striving for that and taking the violent approach and never truly being able to have peace of mind or happiness. Death is everywhere. Death lingers over this film. I mean, there's a lot of symbolism that talks about oranges being symbolic to death, which I'm not too sure if that's a Sicilian or Italian thing, or if that's just something that Ford Coppola has put into this himself.
The Sicilians are very weird people. I wouldn't be surprised.
Very superstitious. In the second film, actually, it's very much a family affair. I mean, his daughter plays Michael Corleone's daughter in the third one, sort of infamously. She's gone on to become a big-time director nowadays, Sofia Coppola. But, his sister, Talia Shire, is in this. His mother played Vito's wife, And apparently it's very, very superstitious. They won't get into coffins, even if it's for play or for acting. So when that character, she passes away in the second film, it's a completely different woman from his mother, who's been playing the character since the beginning of the first one. But yeah, it's a wash with Orange, this film, because that is symbolic of death. You see in the first film, I mean, it is this massive half-hour long scene of just the wedding, and you don't actually get to the violence until about 40 minutes in. And even then, it's so sparing. But again, 70s, this would have been shocking for back then. This would have really rocked people's world and been quite harrowing. It's still rated an R to this day. If it came out now, it'd probably get an M to an MA at most.
It depends, really. I mean, this was back in the day. I haven't seen it, but I know a good chunk about the ratings. Rating system. This still nowadays would have at least sat the line of MA and R. Maybe not M.
Maybe not R. I think it's still.
I guess that would have sat the line.
Yeah, it's quite toned down. It's not super bloody. I mean, there's a moment where a character gets riddled with bullets, but even then, it's not like it's
a difference of changing. It's the change of the times, really, because we've got a lot more violent stuff. You know, we're seeing people torn to shreds when in the 70s. You know, this came out, bam.
I might have talked about it on the show before, but Halloween, the original John Carpenter, is rated R to this day. And it is quite tame. I mean, you get a bit of nudity here and there and a bit of blood and that, but it's nothing too serious. It would be an M to an MA today. I mean, Halloween H20, 20 years later, which came out in 1998, 20 years after the fact, is rated M. And that is a lot bloodier. It's a lot gorier. Kids are allowed to watch it in school, because I know a few people who actually studied horror movies, and did so. But The Godfather, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the second one is a much better film. It's a longer film, because you've got Robert De Niro as the young Vito Corleone, a role originally played by Marlon Brando, a role so iconic it's basically erased his other cinematic, you know.
It's a bit hard to go forward in the rest of my career when everyone just thinks of me as a Corleone. And they obviously forget the fact that I was Jor-El for 3 films.
What are you rebelling against? What do you got? Not saying that, but getting to it. I think the second one is an epic tale of like fathers and sons and the sins. I mean, Michael, played by Al Pacino, is in the present of the film, and he's dealing with all these issues. He's it's just really broad statement there.
Why do you want from me?
The historical parts with the young Vito, played by Robert De Niro, is just stellar. It is a film that you say it is one of the greatest of all time, and you kind of have to, by modern standards, take a look at it and really go, okay, what makes it great? What defines greatness? What defines an epic? And Lawrence of Arabia, which we'll get to in a little bit, but another film I want to talk about first, directed by Sergio Leone, of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, is Once Upon a Time in America, and this stars Robert De Niro, James Woods, Elizabeth McGovern. Listeners might know her as Cora from Downton Abbey. Also a very, very young Jennifer Connelly, before Labyrinth was even a thing.
I have heard of this film.
The Irishman was a big Scorsese film that came out on Netflix a year or two ago, which had the elderly Robert De Niro playing a young, middle-aged, elderly man. It followed this guy through his criminal life over a very long runtime. This film,
Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah, about Jimmy Hoffa, yeah. This film is similar historical setting. It's got a sort of younger to middle-aged Robert De Niro playing a young, middle-aged and elderly Robert De Niro. And it basically follows these characters from childhood in like the slums of Brooklyn in like the early 1900s. It shows them joining this gangster lifestyle, and it paints a really unflattering of the gangster lifestyle. I mean, with The Godfather, I remember reading that Mafioso at the time was saying, this was our life, this is so accurate. But I think, a lot of people have actually said The Godfather is more soap opera than truth. This is like really unpleasantly unflinching, especially for the time, somewhat by today's standards, of like gangsters, not good people. You do not want to be about these people who... You don't want to be like these guys at all.
It's like glamorizing the Yakuza or the Triad.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that.
It is a very long film, 3.5 hours, but I sat through it, and it's hard to find like the full version, because this was cut down and it was like, slammed critically. It was like cut down to like a 2-hour cut. But I definitely saw the 3.5 hour one. And yeah, talk about getting lost in it, because 3.5 hours simultaneously drags, but also feels like it's nothing at all as you just go through these guys' entire lives and see.
Nothing at all.
Yeah, definitely try to track that one down if you can.
Oh, definitely.
It's definitely better than The Godfather, I'd say that much. Lawrence of Arabia, very briefly. It begins at the end. You see T.S. Lawrence's death. He dies swerving to avoid some boys while driving his motorbike, and he crashes and he dies. And then the film is very much a retrospective of seeing him
trying to unite the Middle East to fight against the Turkish.
Alec Guinness as well.
Mm-hmm.
Great to see him, even if he's in brown face.
Young men make war. Old men try to prevent it.
Yes. He was a Jedi Knight, much like your father. This is just going to be an Alec Guinness off for the rest of the episode. What I can say about Lawrence of Arabia is a very grand film with a lot of grand cinematography that really lets you soak in the desert landscape. You truly feel lost within this world. I don't know if this sounds good to you, but it sounds alright by my ear. I had to watch it in parts. I couldn't sit through all of it.
From what I've heard, it's probably one of the longest films out there.
222 minutes or 224 minutes.
Not to mention, it has caused issues going forward.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people don't actually know what T.S. Lawrence looks like nowadays. But when you look at a picture of T.S. Lawrence, it's usually the actor.
Yeah, it's uncanny.
It is.
Yes, Peter O'Toole.
Yeah,
you're right about that. It is uncanny.
It is.
And I mean, even the same for Alec Guinness. I mean, like I said, he is in makeup, but you see the two and it's like, wow, that's really good. Apparently, I did hear from that guy's either son or a relative or a confidant of the real man he played. It was like, Alec Guinness knocks it out of the park. There's a few film festivals have just done screenings of these, and seeing that on the big screen would have truly been something to just be lost in those landscapes.
Would have been awe-inspiring.
And to see... I can't remember how it ends, though.
I think it ends with, like...
Well, I mean, it ends with the beginning.
Yeah, it ends with the beginning, but I was more meaning... I'm pretty sure it might end with the treaty that was signed between the Saudis and the English. I don't know.
I've just remembered another epic movie. Alec Guinness, Bridge on the River Kwai. Have you seen that? World War
Damn
II.
it, I have not.
World War II.
Yes, it's the Burma campaign.
Yes, and they're kidnapped and they're forced to build a bridge.
Yes, I know. I've heard of this film. I have seen snippets of it, but
yes,
I have not seen it.
It is truly a great movie, an epic movie. And again, you just get lost in it. And I kind of have issues with like certain genres of films. Like you sort of, if you get trapped in a setting, like I guess a jungle setting like this is, even like especially ocean-based films and desert-based films sort of turn me off. But these are films that they can just transport you away and you don't mind those things. I think that's, or that I personally don't mind being trapped in those places, is a testament to a good film.
I know there is one epic that I'm going to be watching today, but unfortunately I cannot talk about it.
Which is that?
Patton. It's just recently arrived on Disney Plus, thanks to Star.
That is a twist and a half, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That is quite strange to think that. But Patton, that's the General Patton.
Yes.
Big,
General S. Patton.
I do remember Smokey and the Bandit 3 with Buford Justice, played by Jackie Gleason, does a parody of that, standing in front of the American flag.
Yeah.
But yes, you're going to watch that.
I am going to be watching that. He is a... I have done a bit of research into Patton, and he was he was a good war general. Person.
Divisive.
They're very divisive, much like his counterpart, General MacArthur, unlike General Eisenhower.
So this was World War II, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was an American... I know the basics of it. It is a biopic on Patton's career in World War II. So much so that it follows him in Africa, it follows him in the Western Front and all that. Western Front, Italian Front, because he ended up joining Operation Husky. Just the film itself and some of the lengths it goes to really just prop up the Americans and whatnot. Even going so far as to using actual American Patton tanks, Patton class tanks, as panzers for the German army.
Right.
It's a little confusing.
That must have set the history buffs, in a spin.
Oh, it did. I mean, there's only so many panzers you can actually get your hands on.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I guess, this is quite an older film then. I mean, this is 70s.
Quite old, yeah.
Because, I mean, if Smokey and the Bandit 3 was making a parody of it, it's pretty old.
A lot of people have made parodies of Patton. But mainly just the standing in front of the flag thing.
Oh, it's an iconic image, though.
Oh,
but I'm guessing
then...
then...
iconic general.
Jingoistic, is that perhaps a word you would use? I mean, you're talking about a film you haven't seen yet.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. I guess one thing as well that stands out to me is that a lot of these films are older.
But you're aware of them.
That's what makes them classics, and it's kind of like, well, what makes a modern classic now? How do we know that we're seeing a modern classic? I mean, a very long film, Avatar, James Cameron's now the highest grossing film because it's overtaken Endgame.
I wouldn't call that an epic. I would call that a very excellent film. I would call it epic in scale, but I wouldn't say it's a modern classic. They definitely pushed the boundaries of technology. That's the one.
What about Endgame? What would you say that's kind of an epic in terms of scale and
scale?
stuff?
Yes, not so much everything else.
What about Lord of the Rings?
Yes, that is an epic. That is a classic modern epic.
I mean, all those New Zealand landscapes. Still doing the hard work of New Zealand tourism to this day.
Absolutely. It's just a shame that when they were filming The Hobbit, they moved from the lush green fields of New Zealand to the lush green screens of New Zealand. And that I can not stay awake for a full film.
Yeah, I haven't got around to The Hobbit.
I mean, I'm talking about Fellowship.
Oh, so what are your opinions on Lord of the Rings then?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen Fellowship of the Rings so many times. I've tried to read the books. I've tried to do my research because it's quite a dense.
I've read The Hobbit. And I've watched those films. Surprisingly, I can somehow stay awake through them.
That is bizarre.
It is, but whenever I try to watch the originals, it's just, oh, sweet, we're at this...
Honestly,
credits roll.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, a lot of people hold them out. I saw a Twitter post where it's like, true love is sitting down to watch the extended editions of Lord of the Rings in one sitting. I'm like, that sounds like a hate crime.
That doesn't sound like a hate crime. That sounds like what we were talking about earlier with Clockwork Orange.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have nothing against Lord of the Rings, but like a lot of people love it, but I've just never been able to get into it, and it's really bizarre.
If they love it, then it's good for them. I think.
I wish I could like them, but I just genuinely cannot.
I think they're all right from the bits I've seen. I don't know why I can't get through them. Maybe it's because they're on at the wrong time, or I'm just watching them when I'm super tired. I don't know.
You got to get up early and
it's like the same. I'll probably have the same issue if I went and watched Lawrence of Arabia. I would probably get very tired watching it. I got very tired watching the Snyder Cut, and I actually had a migraine by the end of it.
At least those older films had intermissions as well.
Oh, thank the Lord.
Yes. Yeah. Well, The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. I mean, I guess I'm basic that I like Star Wars.
Those in themselves are epics. But,
Star Wars. Oh god, Last Jedi in length is that's a numb bum film. That one. I kind of wish that Star Wars had the depth of Lord of the Rings, but Lord of the Rings is just too dense for me. There's too much to it. I mean, even if you try to sit down and just take it for what they're giving you, it's still a lot to take in.
Tolkien did a lot of good work.
But,
So did Peter Jackson, but
Peter Jackson obviously succeeded on that front because people who weren't fans are fans now and still watch it on the regular, and more power to them. But I wish I could be with you, but I just can't.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's alright, but I can't say I've seen a proper Lord of the Rings film other than The Hobbits, and even then I'm shunned for it.
But anyway, that's been our discussion of epic movies. Long movies with epic scales, epic stories, epic characters.
Bit more of a ramble, but yeah.
When isn't it?
True enough.
Anyway, we'll see you next time. I'm Royce.
And I'm Joshua.
Bye for now.